So good evening, everybody. I'm Beverly Porter here at the Arc of Whatcom County, and tonight we're talking about transitioning from school services and other services when our children are 17 or younger, when they're a minor, and what to expect and what to think about as your child is turning 18. As I shared, I have a 31-year-old who is autistic, and so I know some of these pieces because I've walked through these, navigated some of these systems, but also I am incredibly privileged to be able to work here at the ARC and talk with other families every day and learn what works and doesn't work for others. So I want to share my appreciation for every family who's taught me and helped me to understand more in supporting my family and others. So I do want to make a land acknowledgement that we are on the land of the ancestral home of the Coast Salish people. The Lummi Nation is also known as the Lakhtamish people. The Nooksack tribe have lived here since time immemorial and continue to show us how to be good stewards of the water, the valleys, and the mountains that we all share. And I also am very appreciative of the work that is unseen that has gone on around the world to be able to build and create the systems that connect one of us, whether it's your smartphone, phone lines, all of these other technologies that connect all of us. And so appreciative of the work, the hard work of hands that has brought us closer together, and the cost of labor by mothers and fathers and even children around the world that help us to connect this evening. So my gratitude for that. So, I'm going to stop sharing then because that is just too overwhelming. Tonight, sort of the process that I'm going to go through is talking about these pieces about what happens when your child turns 18. And one of the things I want you to know is that the ARC has many other workshops and resources about a variety of topics. And so we are doing another workshop in May that is very specific to some of the adult service systems. So very, very much we're going to be relying on next month to follow up on some of the questions or the topics that come up this evening. Two of those in particular, one of those is DDA, and that's the Developmental Disability Administration. So we'll have a lot more information on the application process and some of the pieces with that in May. And as well, the Division of Vocational Rehabilitation, which is all about employment, that's DVR. And that's a system that really kicks in the 18 to 21 years. So as much as we'll cover some information about that, there will be more that comes up in our May workshop. And if you're watching this on our YouTube channel, hopefully you're able to find some other resources that are supportive as well. So as we think about our family member turning 18, one of the things that might have already come up as a surprise to you as a parent is some of the rights that your family member has, even at starting at the age of 13. So I'm going backwards a little bit because at the age of 13, any individual can withhold information, particularly mental health information, from their parents and from others. So there are some specific state laws that provide for the privacy of medical information and diagnostic information specific to mental health. So you may have discovered as you are going to doctor's visits or other therapy visits with your child that when you hit the age of 13, suddenly there were some other hoops to jump through. So one of those pieces that is helpful to know about at age 13, and we can continue to rely on information about that, is having a release of information, having permission from your child to be able to see in some way their information, medical information, or It could be educational information, something like that. So I'm actually going to go to a website that was right in front of me. There we go. That's not going to work. My apologies. I have too many tabs open. There we go. Okay. So several of the insurance companies will have something called a release of information that shows very specifically as a way for your family member to sign a release and give permission for you as a parent to be able to make appointments, to find out about medications, to discover more information around what benefits may be available to your family member. So I was able to pull up from Molina, and then I'm going to try clicking here and see, did Community Health come up, Karen, Carlene? No, it didn't. Okay. I'm gonna try that again. I think I have way too many tabs open. So we'll try this as well. Okay, there we go. Okay, so this is Community Health Plan of Washington. And there's also, I also have access to information from, like I said, Molina Health Plan. This is a really easy way with your physician or medical provider. And particularly in terms of finding out about what benefits are available to somebody, to be able to record a little bit of information about your family member and then ask them to sign this and have some conversation about that, about what it means for you to be able to find out information about eligibility or any information around what kind of services or diagnoses you have or medications. So this form is just an example of what you can do with your insurance provider. And so it also gives room for your family member to say that they're going to allow you to have this kind of access and information for a certain amount of time, or it just allows them to say that they would revoke that whenever they want. But this comes back to this piece about having the right to have privacy, and that there have been times where individuals do want to keep things private. So within our family, we've had a lot of conversations as our kids were turning 13 and talking about being able to make decisions together and being able to support people with their medical decisions. And then based on somebody's verbal skills, how well they might be able to do on the phone, that sort of thing. One of the challenges that can come up, particularly if your family member is not comfortable speaking on the phone or is not speaking at all, is them being able to get on a phone call, and then every single time you need to access some information or provide, trying to set up an appointment, trying to get out information about medications or what other benefits or services somebody may have. So that is a really challenging thing to do. And I know my son could get pretty frustrated with having to do that. So we worked on a release of information, and I wrote down specifically that this was to allow me to be able to advocate for him and support him by making medication changes, discussing anything with the doctor, making appointments, finding out more and more about benefits. So that is one piece you can do. And it's also something that you can do with the school district. So whether your family member is 18 already and you're not a guardian, you can also sign a release of information with the school district in order to be able to continue to participate and have access to information from the school. And welcome to the new folks who are here. For folks who are just coming in, I'm Beverly. And we have just started talking a bit about sort of the ages and stages of moving towards the age of 18 and what we can do to prepare for that. So I'm going to go back to this here. And what I'm going to do is go back specifically to something that's available through the health department. And you may have seen this on the back page of a transition guide. And so this is another resource that that we have available, and we can send you the PDF or show you where to find it. But what has been done with this is trying to make it look a little less overwhelming for us as parents. And even looking at a 4-page release of information might bring a little anxiety to you. I don't want you to feel like you have to do all this at once or that you're even behind on any of these things. So that age 13 release of information and preparing in some ways for age 18 and the age of majority might be a great time to have some conversations with your family member as you work towards many of these other services. So one thing that everybody does need is some sort of photo ID. And your family member will need photo identification as they maybe look to try to find a job or work with the Division of Vocational Rehabilitation. Having ID is really helpful in some circumstances. And if you want your family member to be able to be identified as well as have that safety, being able to go then to the Department of Licensing specifically to get photo identification card. It is much easier before the age of 18 to go through some of the paperwork with the Department of Licensing. And I'm going to go to that website and show you a little bit about that. So the Department of Licensing is just located a little bit north of the Bellis Fair Mall. And many of you may have been there already, but I wanted to just give a little bit more information about it because they have developed their systems and made things a bit easier for folks. So you can certainly find them online. And as you can see, there's a map that you can also access information about how to find that. What I love is there's also a picture of what this looks like. So you have a clue going in. And so if you want to help your family member and reduce their anxiety about this, it's certainly a really important visit to be able to make. And we can all have anxiety going into some new settings and doing some of these things. So if your family member, if it's helpful for them to have a walkthrough, to have some information about what this might be like, it might be helpful for you to show them these pictures, or it could be useful for you to even just go and do a drive-by and visit and see that. This picture here is a little bit older. This is before COVID, but it does show there's a large space inside, several different booths where people walk up to be able to share information. And so if, again, if it's helpful to pre-teach around some of these situations, this is a really useful thing to be able to do. So the other thing about the Department of Licensing is that they do have, let's see, where did that go? Went to the wrong piece there. I'm going to close that one. So they have a list of wait times and information there that is on their webpage. But you can also click on here and schedule an appointment. And that may be the easiest thing for you to do. So this took me back to the statewide website with information about appointments and locations, which is where I found that that map and that information for the Bellingham office. The other piece about this is there's more information about what kind of documentation you need. And as I shared, before the age of 18, as parents, we get a little bit more credibility to say, yes, this is my child. And once somebody turns 18, there are some more requirements around the documentation that's needed for photo ID. So you can look here, I clicked on ID cards for identification cards, and then you can click on this portion that says get an ID card. And what's wonderful is they walk you through now all of these details of, do you want the kind of standard photo ID or do you want the enhanced identification card? The enhanced identification card is very specific for being able to come and go. It's an alternative to a passport. So it does cost a little bit more money, but depending on your family and your travels and what your needs are, it's something to know about. So as you scroll down, you can see how you can make an appointment and you can find out a little bit more about whatever fees there are. But when they ask for proof of identity, this is where it takes you to a really nice breakdown of what do you need before you even come in. And so if you scroll down the page, you can find, let's see, so general requirements for all ages. And then I thought they were going to show me more there. There we go. Standalone documents. So they have a list of different documents that would allow somebody to immediately get the ID card. So a US passport is top of the list. There are other documents that they'll let you know that can also be useful. So there's a full list of information here. And then they do let you know a little bit more about even things like facial recognition technology that is used. So this is really helpful to be able to see some of the things that you do need in terms of proving your identity and going through that process. So that's where, let's see now, stop sharing. That's where knowing a little bit more about what that process is going to be like and what it takes to jump through those hoops to be able to access that service. And hopefully that's something that will be a little bit easier for you right now. I know that there can be a lot of pride for your family member in getting their photo ID as well. And so this is a beginning process of them carrying their ID, maybe having a wallet or a purse, and being able to know that they have a right to be here. And if there are ever any concerns, they have ways to identify themselves as well. And thank you, Nicole. Yes, appreciate you putting that in the chat. The EID, the enhanced identification card, is for land travel only, crossing the border, Canada and Mexico. It's not, doesn't work for flying, or probably for, maybe not for boating. Yeah, I know more about special education than I do about passports and customs and borders. So appreciate that, Nicole, very much. So once you've got that ID, that is a great thing to have. Check that box and know you've got that taken care of. This is one thing that's out of the way. And oh, great, Lori. It works for domestic flights, EID. Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, the photo ID is it's a hurdle, definitely, to try to tackle. So one more thing, but that you can focus on and be able to then move on to some of the next steps. So the next piece that is talked about on here is talking about DDA and applying for DDA by the age of 16 or even by the age of 18. As I shared for folks who came later, we will be talking more in May about the Developmental Disability Administration, as well as the Division of Vocational Rehabilitation. So really going through the nitty-gritty on how those applications look and some of the tricks around that. But it is something that, knowing that the paperwork you have from physicians and school records that you may have are going to be really useful for the Developmental Disability Administration and for DVR and Social Security. But most of you right now are really involved in the school system. And what I wanted to do is bring up a piece about IEPs, because this is where we still have some power and some control and support for our family members in thinking about how we're involved with our kids, whether they're 16 or 21, approaching this age of 18, and wanting to continue to be able to support them in their education. At the age of 18, if we are not guardians or have not gotten a release of information in some way, as parents, we don't have any rights to control how things are working with the IEP. And so it's really important to be able to know that that we don't want to be left out of some of the decision making. An example would be if a student was eligible for special education and could be going to a community transitions program from the ages of 18 to 21. If a school counselor spoke with your student and said, well, don't you want to graduate with all your peers and you've met all the graduation requirements. If we don't have guardianship or some sort of power of attorney or some other rights to be involved in that, the student could actually sign and say, yes, I'd like to graduate now. And then they wouldn't be able to access some of these other services that are really useful and helpful, especially designed instruction related to employment and independent living and further learning. So this is where you want to be able to, again, have these conversations before the age of 18 so that you're prepared in some way with a release of information or power of attorney or guardianship, because you still want to be involved in this. The other piece about this is getting your child ready. This IEP and the education system is set up in order to help our family members receive the services and the supports they need, so they can be more successful when they do leave the school system. So one of the things that's really important is even knowing, did the student participate in the IEP meeting? That is one of the strong pieces that the school district actually has to answer on this IEP form. This is a model form from OSPI, from the Washington State Office of Superintendent of Public Instruction. And this form may look a little different than the IEPs that you've been looking at. I like using this because all the law is on here. Many of the rules, like, did the student participate in the IEP meeting? The next things that are on here are talking about different ways that we have found out about the student's needs. So this is where you want to start thinking about, what have we not done during our family members, studenthood and during their school career, and what are the things that we want to make sure that the school district knows about them to help plan for the future. So they're supposed to do a variety of transition assessments. That could be just even sitting down and having a conversation and saying, what kind of job would you like? Where do you want to live as you get older? What are the things that really interest you in the community? But there are a lot of other assessments that are available to all the educators. And so knowing that there are different ways to get at what people want to do, what the students want to do, but there's also some really great assessments or evaluations about people's abilities and strengths. And so they can do some different surveys or questionnaires or skill tests online or in person with somebody. And one of the other things that can be done is something called a vocational assessment that could even be an in-person opportunity. So knowing that there are a lot of different ways to come at this piece, and particularly for 18 to 21, we want to make sure that our family member has as many opportunities to build their skills and to find out what works as well as what doesn't work. Sometimes that's even more important, to find out what doesn't work for them. And you don't want to be left out of this. You want to be able to be a part of that because you have known this person for 18 years and you have an idea of some of their strengths and even some of their concerns. So again, as I shared, this form not only lists some of these things, it also talks about the law. And the fact is that they have to have a transition IEP in place by the time the student turns 16 or younger if they want. And they have to think about who the student is, what are their needs, what are their strengths and preferences. And you can help with giving that information to the IEP team and participating in that way. And then you can also help by thinking about what are some of the daily living skills that we want to make sure that we build for this student. And how could we do that with the school team right now? So one of the things that I really appreciate about that is recognizing that it takes a village to raise a child. And this is one of the ways to ask that village to help you. Not everybody knows how to step in and offer help or support with our children. Even special education teachers might feel reluctant to ask about some strengths or some difficulties for a student. And so this is really a great opportunity for you to be able to say, these are things that we need help on. And I know all of us have emotional, it's not necessarily baggage, but just this emotional history with our parents, whether we have a disability or not. So there may be ways that you feel ineffective with your child, and that other people have more power or credibility or authority with them. And that's where I want you to be able to think about, in working with the school district, how can I ask those educators to help teach skills that I'm having difficulty with at home? Because our kids will step up. They will meet some of those challenges. And so with the education process and with this transition IEP, I really encourage you to be able to include the IEP team and think about how the school system in these last few years can tuck in some of those things that have challenged us as families and us as parents. All of us go on to continue to learn throughout our lives and maybe surprise our parents, typical or otherwise. So I really encourage you, in working with the IEP team, to think about what are some of the things that are most challenging at home that another person, another educator or paraeducator could have some strength and some power in that, and encourage you to use that. So that's one other piece about this education piece of having a release of information or being guardian allows you the legal right to be able to be involved and advocate and continue to advocate for your family member. So I'm going to go back to this one pager here. One of the next things thinking about then is what I have talked about a little bit more, is guardianship, is thinking about whether or not guardianship is even necessary, or if that's something that you want to explore, if you want to think about power of attorney, and if there's other ways to have a release of information or support with decision making. So this is one thing as well. We have a really great resource on our website, which is right here. And when you click on resources and then scroll down, it might seem kind of overwhelming because there's a big list. Oops, I did it wrong. Well, that doesn't seem overwhelming at all, does it? There we go. I scrolled too far. So under, oh, go ahead,
Beverly,
Carlene. Yeah.
we're not, if you've left that,
Oh,
we're not seeing it.
I'm sorry. Well, you didn't see me doing the wrong thing then either, trying to find it. Let's see. Okay, we'll try this again. Okay, so this is, I'll go back to the home page of the ARC and then show you where we came in, if it'll work. Well, we will try this again. The resource page is listed along the top of our website. And then as you scroll down, you can find under future planning, we have the transition guide that's for Whatcom County, and that's the guide that has that whole list that we've been rolling through of age 16, 17, etc. There's also this future planning guide, and it is a lengthy document, but it goes into details around power of attorney, guardianship, other ways of being supportive in terms of finances and legal support for your family member. And we do have workshops and some videos on our YouTube channel about this as well. So hopefully when I skip back here, then it will follow me. Did that work, Carlene? Okay, great. So the age of 17 is or 17 and a half in terms of thinking about and planning towards guardianship and thinking about the age of 18. Again, as I'd shared, a really great opportunity for having a conversation with your family member about how they make decisions, about how they can be supported, whether they're an adult or a child still, and how you as a parent can be an advocate for them. So we do have connections with some of these other forms as well. And so I can show you that right here. There's a great website called Washington Law Help. And this page about durable power of attorney is something that could be useful for people of any age. I could do durable power of attorney with my spouse to provide him more authority in making decisions around finances or around my healthcare. But there's a very simple form to fill out in order to have power of attorney. And this process is much easier than going through guardianship. The power of attorney assumes that the person who is giving you power of attorney is capable and competent to make that decision to give that that legal right, that advocacy to another person. And so as you think about your family member as they're approaching 18, power of attorney may be something that you're really interested in doing, and that you know that that would be a simpler and less restrictive process to go through. And it may be that you think about your family member and recognize that with their communication and their judgment, that you have some real concerns about them being able to communicate their needs to other folks. So power of attorney might not be appropriate. The thing about power of attorney that is important to know, so you're able with this website to then download the forms and complete those. And you do need to then sign those in front of a notary public. Many of our banks, credit unions and financial institutions have a notary public on staff. or maybe several. So you could print the forms out and then take them into whatever bank that you do use and use those, sign those forms then in front of a notary public. And then those are official, and you can give copies of those to a doctor, to other medical providers, and to other folks. And I don't always like to think about the worst thing that can happen. We want to plan for the dream. So in considering power of attorney, as I shared with cognition, with judgment, with people understanding the consequences of their decisions, that's part of a competency or a capacity decision that you know your child better in terms of if they're able to actually make decisions that can protect their welfare and their safety. If, for instance, you had given, or I had given power of attorney to Carlene for myself, and then I decided I didn't like Carlene anymore, and I just met this guy at the Horseshoe Cafe at 2 o'clock last evening and decided to sign power of attorney over to him, I could do that. So that's a piece to understand and know about power of attorney. If you have a family member who is going through some very appropriate adolescence distancing with you as a parent, that's really normal and typical. And it might be really useful for you to think about how would your family member respond if somebody did try to take their money, exploit them in some way. Are they vulnerable in some way to that? Power of attorney might not be the right decision for your family. So that is a consideration in all of this. And again, all of these things are, as we think about our family member turning 18, how do we stay involved legally, ethically, as parents and as support for them, and have the right to, or the capacity in some way, to step in and continue to make sure that they're accessing the education services that they're entitled to, that they are not being exploited in some way, and that they're protected. So that's one of the pieces about power of attorney and guardianship that I think is really, really useful to know about. So I'm gonna jump back onto our timeline again here. So at the age of 18, certainly Social Security benefits can change. If your child is currently on Social Security, when they turn 18, you will need to reapply. But as an adult, an 18-year-old who has eligible disabilities and is not able to work or work to a great extent and provide for their own income and health and welfare, they may be eligible for what is called SSI, and that's Supplemental Security Income. And along with that SSI comes Medicaid, the health benefits, and connections with other services and supports. So the other piece that can happen when your child turns 18 is when you are connected with DDA, you may be eligible to be a personal care provider for your family member. They may be eligible for support and services, assistance with personal care tasks. And so as parents, we're not paid to provide some of those supports and services for our children when they're younger. But when they turn 18, you can get paid as a parent to support with hygiene, bathing, meal preparation, eating, all sorts of personal care tasks related to their safety and their welfare. So we did have a workshop recently where we had somebody from Consumer Direct Washington who talked about how to become an individual provider. And at the ARC, we have resources and information about that. I became a personal care provider for my son when he turned 18, and he also started getting Social Security. So we began charging him room and board. And we want to make sure that we maintain all of those benefits. So in charging his room and board then, the Social Security came to us as families, as parents, and we were able to save some of that income over time. So what we did then is we saved up some dollars and we bought a tiny home. And so he lives in a tiny home on our property. That was, if you'd asked me when he was 7 years old, if that's what we were gonna do, I had no idea what the future looked like. But you have some, I hope, hopefully, getting Social Security and the possibility of being an individual provider can open some other doors for you and your family economically that you can take advantage of and know that that can be really useful and helpful. So that is a big thing when somebody turns 18, to be able to have access to more of those services as they are an adult. And as I shared earlier, in May, at that workshop on May 23rd, we were going to have folks from DDA, from the Developmental Disability Administration, and from DVR, being able to talk about what it looks like to access more of those services through DDA. What does employment look like? What are the other supports that are available in the adult system? Because right now you're in the lucky position that your family member has a right to an education. And so that's why I really focus on that piece around education and what can you take advantage of right now, while you still have a few years with the school district to be able to teach and offer some more options for your family member. So we'll talk about that more when we do our workshop in May. So what I'd like to do, I have 2 more documents I can show real quickly. And they are, we have access to some other easy planning tools that are consistent with OSPI and the education plans, as well as incorporating some of the services and things that may be available to you as a family through the Developmental Disability Administration. So this star chart might be something you've seen before. I blew it up kind of big. I hope you can see that well. And we will email this out to everybody. Many times as we're thinking about what are the services and the things available for our family, we're absolutely thinking about eligibility. What is paid for? What does our family member have a right to? And what are the services that are actually paid for that we don't have to go out and scramble and try to figure out? So this education program, that high school transition program, is really important to be able to know about. And then the personal care is something starting at age 18, absolutely. There's also assistive technology is another piece that's listed here. So there's support in terms of accessing assistive technology. And knowing about that now, you can work with, hopefully you can work with that transition program to build some skills, to try out some of the different tools that may be available that are going to help somebody to finish tasks, to do some work, to know where they're going. There's, getting a smartphone and then being able to download the phone app for WTA means when the bus is coming, and you've got information and a little more independence with that. So if having a smartphone and having the location turned on or having some other things set up so that you have some independence comes from having dollars available through DDA, understanding that some of these apps and things are available, and then some other technology things that can also build independence and build some skills in the community. Something as simple as a blood sugar app. We talked about transportation, some other things, but those all help to build connection and independence in the community. I used to do just the goofiest thing that when the kids were younger, and that was setting a timer on the stove and saying, if I'm not back home in 30 minutes, when the timer goes off, call dad. Cause this was way back. Quite a while ago, but part of it was building my son's skill and his confidence in being home alone and knowing what to do if I didn't get back. What were the next things that he needed to do? So having some technology and being able to use that with the school district, and in other ways can help with building some of those independent living skills. And can sometimes give you a little bit of a break as well. So this star chart is really useful for thinking about things you do have in place right now, and maybe other things that you want to try to add in to build into your life. So we can get this out to you, and this again gives many of these ideas of things that we've talked about, and has this timeline again of thinking about getting the identification card, thinking about some of these IEP goals, and looking at what we do at age 18 to 19, and then looking into adulthood as well, of what does it look like for adult services. So again, we have this list of kind of those timelines and deadlines that exist, that hopefully make this feel a little less overwhelming for approaching many of these systems. So what I thought I would do then is go ahead and click off of the recording. And